Attorney John Lucas, he himself is a Vietnam veteran, West Point graduate, and retired Army Special Forces. And he says there is no greater danger to the country than this effort to politicize the military. John joins me now to break all of this down. John, thank you so much for your service. And I also appreciate your insight into all of this. And I can imagine that the news today from CENTCOM, incredibly disheartening, but I know for those who served, it's a little bit more personal than for civilians.
Well, it is, and thank you for having me, Dana. And I just heard the news just before we got on here, and it's just heartbreaking to read of it. And you know, being objective, things like this can happen in wartime. It's a terrible thing when it happens. It does happen. But the fact that a strike like this occurs shows the huge risk inherent in this so-called over-the-horizon strategy that the Biden administration has adopted and touted to everyone. And it's extremely risky when you don't have people on the ground to observe and control what's happening.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because August 29th, we still had some boots on the ground, but we didn't have a complete withdrawal yet. And you raise a good point. I mean, even then, how in the world is that over the horizon strategy going to be effective in that area when this happens, when you're still evacuating Americans and civs out of Kabul? I mean, I don't see how that's feasible. It seems it's almost seemed like the over the horizon was a strategy that they offered because they had nothing else that they could substitute.
Well, and there was, whether they will admit it or not, there was tremendous political pressure to do something to show that the over-horizon strategy would work. And so we don't know the facts yet, but I don't have a high level of confidence that we'll ever fully know the facts. But there's certainly strong reason to suspect that the military felt under a great deal of pressure to produce something for the administration to show that its strategy would work. And it, of course, turned out to be a catastrophe and worse than that for one family.
Right, very much so. John, one of the things that I've heard from so many veterans like yourself is part of the announcement from General McKenzie with CENTCOM is that there's going to be no disciplinary action. And I totally agree with what you said as well. I mean, when you are in a fog of war and when you're in a military conflict, the horrible reality is that you have loss of life in this manner. If this was a lower level military member who had made this error, they absolutely would have been brought up in some sort of disciplinary procedure. But that obviously, they were given the order to carry this out, and they carried their orders out as they were told. To hear that, I don't know if disciplinary is the discipline, any kind of discipline is if that's what I'm looking for, or accountability. Because I hear from so many veterans that the higher you go, the less that people are held accountable. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's almost a truism. It falls in what I call the category of stating the obvious. That unfortunately, that the higher you go, the less accountability there is. Other people, this is not original to me. Other people have commented that privates or sergeants or enlisted men are disciplined for losing a rifle. But we, through this strategy, have lost billions of dollars worth of equipment and tens of thousands of rifles, but with no accountability. So some general, sometime, someplace has to lay his or her stars on the line and say, I can't do this in good conscience, faithful to my oath of office and my duty, and I'm putting my stars on the line, and if you insist that I do it, I will resign. That has yet to happen, but it needs to happen.